It is time for Pete Prisco's brand new power rankings here on CBS Sports HQ. That's Pete Prisco. I'm Chris Hassel. Pete, really a shake-up Sunday with a lot of your top teams losing.
Yeah, there were some teams that did not quite look like they should be in the top 10, and there were others who have started to emerge and to show their power a little bit. Look, it's been a weird year so far in the NFL. The supposed power division out west had 3 teams lose to teams in the AFC South. Think about that. I mean, that just doesn't happen that way. So this is a weird start to the season. We say this every year at this time of the year. You know what I always say?
What?
Is anybody any good? And it's a legitimate question.
Somebody's got to be good.
No, they all have flaws right
Okay.
now. I find a lot of negative in things, Chris.
Yeah, that's true. There's a new number 1. There's a new number 2, and it's teams that you would not expect to be at the top at this point in this season. But they're the only teams that are undefeated. The Eagles are 1. The Dolphins are 2. Look at the Jags. Into the top 10 at number 9. They're the biggest riser this week. In the mid-teens, we have teams showing some signs of life. The Titans and the Colts picking up their first victories of the season, both of them up 8 spots. As Pete mentioned, a pretty good week for the AFC South in comparison to the AFC West. The Saints, they started the season number 6. They're now all the way down at number 21 after another bad loss. Raiders down to 25, down 9 spots, the lone 0-3 team in the league. And there's a new last place team. That would be the Texans at 0-2-1. All right, so we have Pete Prisco. We are also joined by Bryant McFadden as we discuss Pete's power rankings today. Starting at the top, fellas, the question is why Eagles over Dolphins? You got that question up in the newsroom with a lot of Dolphins fans up there. They're saying, hey, we've beaten better teams. Why aren't we number 1?
Who's the better team? The eye test. If you look at the 2 teams,
the Eagles.
Who's the better team? The Eagles are the better team.
The Eagles.
And that's why they're in the number 1 spot. There's no question about that. In my mind, they're the number 1 team. And we'll find out Thursday when Miami goes to Cincinnati. That'll further validate why they're in the number 2 spot. Give the Miami Dolphins all the credit in the world. Coming out 3-0, tough schedule, beat the Ravens at Baltimore, beat the Bills. That Bills team, by the way, ran 90 plays and dominated the game, had over 450 yards of offense and lost with none of their players on the defensive side of the ball. That's not an excuse. Those are facts. Give Miami credit. They're 3-0. But I just think the eye test, the Eagles, the way they're playing, they're the better team.
And B-Mac, you agree?
No question, Chris. I tweeted this out, that out, I think the end of the 1 o'clock games, I think it was, that the Eagles might be the best team in the NFL. I agree with Pete. They're so balanced. We can talk about Jalen Hurts and the offense, but let's highlight the defense, right? I mean, all the new moves they made on the defensive side so far has paid off. Hassan Reddick has been outstanding. James Bradbury pairing him up with big play Darius Slay, adding Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Everything they've done to improve their team, they're starting to see those dividends pay off tremendously for their defense. And then, of course, the offense, I think they're one of the more balanced teams in the National Football League. And Jalen Hurts, if you have any questions or concerns in regards to who he is as a quarterback, can he lead this team? Man, he's answering all of those questions right now.
By the way, both these teams will face stiff challenges this week.
Yes.
You have Cincinnati hosting Miami on Thursday. Then you have Jacksonville going to, dare I say it, Jacksonville going to Philadelphia in what is now a big game.
So Hurts, you see only 2 players with shorter odds to win the MVP. You also saw Tua Tagovailoa on the list there as well, 14-1 to win MVP. It's crazy that he's even on this board considering where we were at with Tua going into the season. Pete, it doesn't sound like you're ready to eat crow just yet with Tua and the Dolphins.
No, I mean, they're off to a good start. He's played better than I thought he would play. Give him credit. But again, now you go out on the road against a good team. If they play well and win this game, then you start putting a little hot sauce on that crow and start throwing it down your throat. But right now, I'm not ready to eat it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have the concerns that Pete had in regards to Tua coming into the season. I felt like with him having the outstanding players surrounding him, all he needed to do was just stand upright and just do what he's been called to do, which is throw passes. And so far, he's done so. Now, this Cincinnati ball game is a tricky ball game because, of course, I know we're not talking numbers, but Cincy is giving points. Cincinnati has struggled, especially in regards to protecting their quarterback, Joe Burrow. But the odd makers believe they're the better team going into this ball game. So me personally seeing if the Miami Dolphins, if they're a legit team, they find a way to take care of their business, or they play their Super Bowl this past Sunday against the Buffalo Bills and left it all on the line against the Bills and just kind of overlooked the Cincinnati Bengals. So I'm right there with you, Pete. This is a big-time measuring like stick game for the Miami Dolphins based on everything they had to do to beat the Buffalo Bills and then, of course, traveling on a short week to play against the Cincinnati Bengals.
So what about the Bills? They were number one before the season. They were number one until the Dolphins knocked them off this week. How concerning are the injuries on defense moving forward?
Really concerning. I mean, anytime you lose a guy like Micah Hyde in the back end of your defense, that's really concerning. And not just him. I mean, Poyer didn't play. The corner Benford was stepping in to play for Tre'Davious White all year to start the season. Now he's got a broken hand. They have guys on the offensive line hurt. Ed Oliver didn't play. I mean, across the board, they're a banged-up team. And it showed on Sunday. It really did. That wasn't the same team. They moved the ball. They moved up and down the field. They just couldn't score.
They don't win close games. They didn't last season either, as the graphic shows. They have not won tight games.
That's something they have to learn how to do. And they expected to go into Miami, and I think they expected to move the ball the way they did it. They expected to score more points. Miami did a good job of getting them to bog down at certain points. The clock management was terrible at the end of the half. It was terrible at the end of the game. Those are things they need to work on. But Buffalo, when they get their guys back, Micah Hyde's not coming back. When they get a lot of those guys back, they're going to be right back in the mix. It's one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league.
Yeah. I think the injuries played a big part in the loss for Buffalo because the depth wasn't there. And if you watch that ball game, man, they were tired. They were tired on both sides of the football, but they just didn't have the depth to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Miami Dolphins, who was a more of a healthier team than the Buffalo Bills. But when they get some of their pieces back into the fold, especially on the defensive side, this is a team that's going to be a team that will cause a lot of damage throughout the year, especially with number 17, Josh Allen, playing the way he's been playing so far.
Still your team to beat, Pete?
Yes, I'm not changing that pick. With
that
offense being what it is, and again, they didn't score what they were scoring last week, but they moved up in the 90 plays and 450 yards of offense. They moved up and down the field.
All right, let's move on to a couple more top teams that lost this past weekend, the Chiefs and the Bucs. Both of them down 3 spots, but they're right next to each other in your poll. Just watching these teams, I feel a lot better about the Chiefs than I do about the Bucs. We're going to find out this week.
Yeah, they play each other this week. And the Chiefs have issues on offense. And, the whole narrative that they could figure it out without Tyreek Hill, okay. But when you play the Colts, and Gus Bradley knows how to play them. He plays off coverage. He makes Patrick Mahomes be patient. He doesn't like that. When you have Tyreek Hill, you can be patient and still probably rip off a big play or two. Without him, it's a different offense. You got to be patient, and you're not going to get those chunk plays, and that showed up in that game. I was disappointed with the way they played on offense. This is 2 weeks in a row. They haven't looked great on offense. So they need to pick it up starting this week. And, oh, by the way, you mentioned Tampa Bay. They've had problems on offense. They haven't had many problems on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, sloppy game from the Chiefs. Just look at the graphic right there. Muff punt, missed extra point, fake field goal. That was a horrible decision. Missed the 34-yarder as well. And then you talked about some of the miscues on the offensive end. This was... Granted, week 2, they didn't look their best, but they still found a way to put points on the scoreboard to win against the Chargers. But in week 3 against the Colts, we really saw the Chiefs missing the cheetah, Tyreek Hill. Because when they had Tyreek Hill, even if the offense has been a little inconsistent, he still provides that element of fear that opposing defenders have to respect, and it opens up so many things for other guys. We're not seeing some of the Tyreek Hill's quote-unquote replacements do anything as of yet. I mean, it has been all about Travis Kelce and then Pat Mahomes just improvising, making things happen on the fly. So can they bounce back against Tampa? And oh, by the way, their defense, I understand they just took one on the chin from the Green Bay Packers, but Tampa's defense is better than the Colts defense. So if they're able to face off this weekend, this is another tough challenge for the Kansas City Chiefs and Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, BMAX said if they're able, because the hurricane bearing down on Tampa might be able to get that out of there before the game on Sunday night. We'll see if they make any changes.
Could move it to
site.
Midwest site somewhere they're talking about. So we'll see.
Let's move on to the Ravens, who are at number 8. And, boy, if they hang on and win that game where they're up 21 in the fourth quarter, they might be your number 1 team.
They would
the way
be.
Lamar Jackson's playing right now.
They would be. And I say this all the time now. Every single game, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Lamar Jackson gambled on himself. He took a gamble.
So far, so good.
And he's winning big. I mean, this is a guy who's playing the best football of his career right now. And that's saying something. He won an MVP a couple years ago. He's playing better than that. All credit goes to Lamar Jackson. He's improved greatly as a passer from the pocket. He scares you now down the field. He's still capable of running. By the way, right now he is tops in the league with touchdown passes with 10. He's also in the top 5 in rushing. The last time that happened, Frankie Sinkwich, 1944.
Show your age, Pete.
Old Frankie
Show your age,
Sinkwich.
Pete.
B-Mac, you remember Frankie Sinkwich, don't you?
He won a Heisman,
I don't remember
He won a
Frankie.
Heisman Trophy, Frankie Sinkwich, back in the day.
I've never even heard of him.
I don't remember Frankie, but Pete, we know you've been around for a long time, so show your knowledge and your wisdom and your age. Thank you for giving us that sound info about Frankie. What's his last name?
Sinkwich.
Sinkler. I hope I said it right. Shout out to Frankie, by the way.
Sinkwich.
But listen.
Like a sandwich.
Listen, guys. Lamar Jackson, I echo everything that Pete Prisco just said about Lamar Jackson. My goodness. The man already won an MVP already, and he's playing 10 times better than what he did during that MVP campaign. Lamar Jackson is standing in the pocket making big-time throws, and he does not have the luxury that some of these big-name quarterbacks have in regards to who is catching his passes. He's throwing big-time throws to Bateman, Duvernay, and to whoever it is out there lining up at the wide receiver position. The only known commodity that's catching Lamar Jackson's passes is Mark Andrews. Every other individual, especially at the wide receivers, they're basically number 2s and number 3s, and we can't tell the difference. Like you said, Pete, this man is earning so much money just in the first few weeks of the season, and right now he's playing better than any quarterback in the National Football League. Hands down.
By the way,
it's amazing to watch. And good luck in trying to pay him, because if you didn't want to pay him this past offseason, good luck if he finished the year out like he's been doing healthy. Good luck in trying to pay him next offseason.
Yeah, but they could also tag him if they want to and keep tagging him if they
He
want
won't
to.
play.
Well,
He won't play,
Then
Pete.
he doesn't play. Leave the money on the field. I mean, I'm not risking losing him, and they'll tag him if they have to. B-Mac, he's been forced to play this way because their defense has been so bad. I mean, their defense has been terrible. There's nothing about the Ravens that you would have come to expect with that defense. They've been awful on defense, and I disagree with you. I think guys like Bateman and Duvernay, they're emerging players. By the end of this year, you will be talking about Bateman as a number 1 wide receiver in this league. How about that?
And you know why you will be able to maybe mention his name as a number 1 wide receiver in the league? Is because his quarterback is making him look better than what he is.
Because
That's what
he was
great
a
quarterbacks
first-round
do.
pick.
You know
It takes
this, Pete.
time, B-Mac. It's a first-round
But
pick.
Pete,
It takes time.
Pete, you know one thing about great quarterbacks, they make their pass catchers sometimes look better than what they are, especially if they haven't really established themselves yet. Lamar Jackson is making everything in that offense look better than what they are, especially with the injuries on the offensive line. Hey, they missing their best offensive lineman in Stanley, but you can't tell the difference. Listen, they won't be able to pay him, and if they franchise tag Lamar Jackson, Lamar, don't play. I'm telling them right now, Pete. Tell them don't play. I know you don't like that, but if they
I don't care either way. I'm just telling you he'll play. Nobody leaves $45, $50 million per year. You only have so many earning years in your body. He'll play.
No, don't play.
He'll
We can
play.
talk about this.
He'll
one.
play.
Nope, don't play.
Frankie Sinkwich, you think he made over $1,000 throughout his career?
He probably made $300 and a couple beers for playing his entire career.
He was born in Croatia, by the way.
He was?
You know that?
No, I did not.
Okay, let's recap the top 10 with Pete Prisco. We're not done talking about top 10 teams because we do have to get to the Jaguars, the highest riser. Chargers down 4 spots, but still in your top 10. We're not going to hit on them. I thought they'd drop a little bit more. They got blown out by the Jags.
Bad injuries, too.
You're not pressing the panic button yet. All right. When we come back, we will talk about those Jags. Are they ready to not just be a playoff team, but maybe a contender in the AFC? God, they look terrible this week. So the Jags at number 9, just ahead of the Chargers, who they beat. Okay, we got Pete Prisco, we've got Bryant McFadden. I was reading Pete's article on CBSSports.com today, and you said that the Jags are the biggest riser, but you say they might be ahead of schedule. Were you being facetious? I mean, I don't think there's a might be, is there? They're ahead of schedule.
Well, they're 2-1. It's only 3 weeks. What if they go in the toilet in the next 5 weeks?
So you're still worried about them?
No, I think they're better than I thought they would be at this point. I didn't think they would go to Los Angeles and win. The Chargers were banged up. Let's be real. Herbert was hurting. He played. You're accountable. I get it. They lost their left tackle during the game for the season. They lost Bosa in that game. He went down. He has a groin injury. They didn't have Keenan Allen. They're banged up, so I understand it. But banged up means 24-17. They beat the daylights out of them. They physically mauled them. And that defense is nasty. They're number 1 in run defense. This is an interesting situation for them. They're the number 1 run defense in the league right now. They play the Eagles, who really cause problems for defenses. Last year, the Saints were the number 1 run defense in the league and went to Philadelphia and got run on for over 200 yards. Why? Because it's hard to prepare for that offense. I worry about them this week in that game because they're young, they're aggressive, they sometimes over-pursue, and that could be a problem against the Eagles. But man, oh man, that defense is tough, physical, violent, and nasty. They're going to be a problem.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm excited about Jacksonville. And I understand you talked about what happened against Washington. It was the first game, you're trying to figure things out. On the road, they got the best from Washington, especially Carson Wentz. But since then, they really settled in, and they're now starting to create an identity for themselves on both sides of the football. And Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback in the division right now, the AFC South. There's no debating. There's no arguing about that. He is the best quarterback in the AFC South. And when you have good coaching, my goodness, things look different. The flow of the games look different for ball clubs. People are doing what they're supposed to do. They're in the right place. They were just in a very, very bad situation last year with that coaching staff, and now getting quality, sound coaches in the building on both sides of the football. We're starting to see the talent surface. Don't forget, this is a team that has done a real good job based on acquiring big-time talent because of bad records. They have been able to draft extremely high. They've had money available, and now we're starting to see that talent surface and be quality, good players so far. So this is the game of the week for me, because if they can find a way, Pete, to take care of their business against Philly, get this, they have Houston, the Colts, the Giants, the Broncos, and the Raiders coming up. So this is a big measuring stick for Jacksonville to see exactly how good they can be.
And then the Kansas City game will be flexed to Sunday night. Think about that. I mean, my gosh.
Jacksonville on Sunday night?
My gosh. They're just playing. And here's the thing, couple things about this. You get rid of a clown coach, and now you got a real coach. That's a big difference. You mentioned it. They're much better. Mike Caldwell's schemes are outstanding, by the way, on the defensive side of the ball, creative as can be. All those people out there who buried Christian Kirk, how dare they give him that contract? He's second in the league in touchdowns. He's second in the league in 20-plus plays. He's also got more receiving yards than Devontae Adams. Think about that for a second. So this team is built for the future, but the future might be coming a little sooner than some of us expected.
Yeah, up 13 spots this week to number 9 there in Duval. All right, Cowboys with the win last night, I guess, on Monday Night Football against the Giants. They're up 6 spots to number 13, and Cooper Rush, 3 starts, 3 wins in his career.
Quarterback controversy. Jerry said so.
You're not buying that, though.
Jerry said, there's a quarterback controversy.
He said it, but are you buying it?
It's ridiculous. Give me a break. Dak Prescott is the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, and he should be. But the nice thing to know is you have a guy who can go in and be a serviceable backup. I always say, everybody always says if you have 2, you don't have 1. That's true. But you need 1 for a couple games or a game. If Cooper Rush had to play the entire season, they'd be in trouble. I don't care what anybody says, they'd be in trouble. They're better off with Dak Prescott. He's a better quarterback. But in this type of situation, it's nice to have a guy like Cooper Rush who can come in and play well and get you some wins when your quarterback isn't healthy.
Yeah, and one thing we're seeing with Cooper Rush that we didn't see with Dak Prescott is an offensive rhythm. You know, he's done a great job in managing the system, not turning the ball over, and just allowing the players surrounding him to do what they've been paid to do, and he's taking what the defenses has been giving him. And speaking of defenses, man, I mean, in a night where your best defensive player wasn't feeling himself, other players stepped up and still was able to provide 5 sacks. Think about this. They had 5 sacks against the New York Giants. Parsons didn't have one. Didn't have one at all. So that has to be the calling card for their team until they get healthy at the quarterback position. Their defensive linemen, they got to continue to dictate the flow of the ball game and just beat their matchups. And that's what they've been doing. They did so against Tampa. They did so against Cincinnati. And, of course, Monday night, they did so against the New York Giants. So I think they have the ability to do that week in and week out, especially with Parsons feeling well.
It helped that all you had to do was put a couple quarters in the turnstile and you went right around Evan Neal. I mean, my gosh, boom, just go right through him. He was awful, and he needs to be better. Their scheme wasn't great either. And there would have been about 5 or 6 more sacks if Daniel Jones couldn't move. He was able to move away from pressure. Dallas has a good defense, and the other thing about them is when they get their quarterback back, they're going to get that offensive line going again too, because to get Jason Peters healthy. He's working his way back in. They get Tyler Smith playing well. He's playing well. This is going to be a good team again.
Could get Dak back as soon as this week. Go ahead, B-Mac.
Real quick, when Dak comes back, especially with the defense doing what they've been doing, how competitive do you think the Cowboys can be in regards to the Eagles?
Oh, I think they can be competitive. But it has to be about the defense, though. I don't think they're ever going to be dynamic on offense. The Eagles are dynamic on offense, and they can play defense. Look, if you could score and rush the passer, you're going to win a lot of games in this league.
All right, so Cowboys, one of the teams rising. Let's talk about a couple of teams falling, including the Cardinals, who are a miracle comeback away from being winless right now. I mean, they looked like the team we thought they were going into the season this past week.
Yeah, they did not play very well. And there's some people that are talking about pressure on that head coach, pressure on that general manager, and a lot of pressure on that quarterback. They have to learn how to win games. I mean, if you're Kyler Murray, you get that contract, you have to raise the play around you up, and he hasn't done that. It's been a real disappointment for him. There's a team that could use Christian Kirk. Oh, by the way, they had him. They could use him in that offense. And everybody thinks when Hopkins comes back, they're going to be back into the mix. I don't think he solves the problem either. There's too many issues with this team right now. I do not think they're a good team. And they're going to struggle this season across the board in every facet, by the way, until Kyler Murray elevates his game to where he's in that star status as a quarterback.
Hey, Pete, all 3 guys that you talked about in regards to having pressure, they all got extended. The head coach, the GM, and the quarterback.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They all got extended. Think about this. So they kind of not necessarily stuck with those individuals, but contractually speaking, they're kind of stuck with them. Now, this has to be a game where they get right back in the winning column. They have the Carolina Panthers coming up. They travel to Carolina. I'm right there with you. Something seems to be off with their offense and their defense. Man, if you didn't know any better, you thought they were playing with their eyes closed because they're just leaving people open and they're not tackling well, and we're not seeing the energy. But everything goes on the quarterback's shoulders because, like you said, he just got a huge contract, and it's his job to deliver. And this has been a different type storyline than what we've seen in years past. Usually they get off to a good start. 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, and then they fall from behind in the second half of the season. Now they're getting off to a bad start, and if they get off to a bad start, their season could be over before November even hits.
Is the loser of the Carolina-Arizona game the coach that's going to get it first? I mean,
Matt Rule might have saved some things last week with that.
Yeah, but if you don't look good in this game, you're right back to where you were.
And it's not just getting off to a bad start this season. As you saw on one of those graphics, it's the first quarter. They haven't scored a single point in the first quarter, and they've given up more points in the first quarter than any other team.
Well, he asked Kyler Murray to play more like a backyard player, and doesn't work. How about coaching him?
No question.
So they're down 7 spots to number 19. The Raiders, your biggest faller, down 9 spots all the way to number 25. Are they already toast in that division?
No, they're not already toast, but I mean, when you look at the Raiders, they have problems across the board. I mean, this is a major disappointment. You get a new coach, you just feel like you're going to elevate the offense with Derek Carr. You go get Devontae Adams, and you're not the same team you were. Remember, that team went to the playoffs last year. Rich Bisaccia wasn't good enough. They got rid of him. They brought McDaniels in, and they're not better. And that's the major disappointment right now for the Raiders. And you have 2 supposedly really good edge rushers, And you're supposed to influence the quarterback more than what they're doing. And so they're disappointment right now.
Big time disappointment. I think they're one of the more bigger disappointments in the National Football League. You said it. Think about this. That team made it to the playoffs last year in a difficult season away from the football field when they lost their head coach who was fired. They lost one of the best offensive playmakers who was basically kicked off the team. And they found a way to fight through those adversities and get into the playoffs. We felt like this roster they put together for 2022 was better than 2021's roster, and we're not seeing the production. We're not seeing the consistency. At the end of the day, this all falls on the shoulders of Josh McDaniels. Hands down. Whatever happens falls on the shoulder of Josh McDaniels, because in 2021, Derek Carr looked like a better quarterback without Davante Adams. And in 2022, he has Davante Adams, and he is not looking like the guy we've seen in years past. What is the difference? The head coach. And we've seen this kind of storyline from Josh McDaniels before in his quick stint with the Denver Broncos years ago. Sometimes head coaches is not made for everyone. That title is not made for everyone. They better bounce back, because if they go 0-4, yes, flush it down the toilet. Their season pretty much is over. If they lose to the Broncos this week, playoff hopes, I think it's safe to say they're disco dead. And disco has been dead for a long, long, long time.
Coming back, B-Mac. It's coming back.
Always comes back.
Staying alive, baby. Come on, it's coming back.
If they lose this week, then they got to go to Kansas City the following week on a Monday night.
You know what? If they don't win this week, it's the last dance for romance.
I don't know what that means. But that's some kind of disco reference.
Yeah, that's a disco reference.
Hey, well done.
Donna Summer, come on, man.
Jeez, there you go, Pete.
Yeah, but I'm asking in the reality side of things, who would it be the last dance for in that organization?
Yeah, it might be the quarterback's last dance. No.
No.
You're not getting rid of the coach. You just hired him.
You're not getting rid of the quarterback either.
No, I know.
They're the only 0-3 team in the NFL, but they're not in last. And neither are the Falcons.
Yeah, which is, yeah.
Yeah, Falcons, they won, so you finally had to take them out of the basement. And now it's the Texans and your guy, Davis Mills.
Yeah, and Davis Mills is not playing well. I'm going to be I've defended Davis Mills. I thought he would take his game to the next level, and he has not done that. They're struggling. They back-to-back road games was tough last week, but he threw a terrible interception at the end of the game. You cannot do that. Worst case scenario, you go to overtime. It was a bad throw. Looked right at the guy, just never saw him. It was a terrible decision by him. He also threw an end zone interception as well. Made some good throws. That's the thing about him. There are some good throws. I will say this, though. Chargers, be careful this week. Be careful. You have a lot of injuries. You lost some big-time players on your team. That could be a problem.
Yeah, the thing about the Texans, they're losing every way you can think of. I mean, you saw what happened in the first game of the tie against the Colts, and then the Broncos 16-9, and of course last week against Chicago. They should have won that ball game. But that's the telling sign of a team that's not really good. They're not close to being good just yet, because they don't know how to win ball games. And hopefully they find a way to do so throughout the course of this season. Being able to beat the Chargers, as you mentioned, team that's kind of dealing with a lot of injuries, this would be a huge game for the Texans and Davis Mills. They get the Chargers at home. So if they can find a way to take care of their business, then, they have some life going on, some nice energy going on within their organization. But so far, every way you can imagine to lose a ball game, it has happened to the Texans.
But they could easily be 3-0. Let's think about that for a second. They should have won game one. They probably could have and should have won game two against Broncos, and they should have won last week. I mean, I agree. They could be 3-0 right now.
Why do you have them last?
Because you got to put somebody in the last spot. Who would you put last?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think the Bears are one of the worst teams in the league. They're 2-1.
They're 2-1. How can you put the Bears?
You can't. Yeah. All right, Pete Prisco, power rankings. Raiders are the only 0-3 team left.
Would you put the Raiders last, B-Mac?
They're not the worst team.
Yeah, they're the only 0-3 team left.
They're not the worst. If the Raiders and Texans played on neutral field, who would you pick?
I would pick the Raiders.
Okay, you just proved my point.
So you can have the Texans. You can have the Texans 32 and the Raiders 31.
Okay, you just proved my point.
Full power rankings at CBSSports.com with explanations on all the teams that we did not hit. BMAC, all things covered. Latest podcast is what?
We got big play Darius Slay joining us, coming from one of the hottest teams in the National Football League. He will be joining us on our next episode. Make sure you check us out.
So two corners who could cover and one who couldn't. That's amazing.
Who's the one who can't?
Yeah, who's the one that couldn't cover?
B-Mac.
All right. Download and follow All Things Covered. Thanks, B-Mac. Thanks, Pete.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.